Hi. The vast majority of you watching this little video will have either have concluded that you've clicked onto the wrong site or that the Bottler blogs have been hacked by some weird bloke sitting in his front room. Well, I want to assure you that neither of those two things are true. My name is Mike Wildsmith, and I've got the great privilege of being invited to be the chaplain of Sir Thomas Bottler. And I'm really privileged to have been asked to do so, and I'm delighted to be taking up that new role. Many of you would have understood that had I been able to be in school in the last few weeks. We'd planned to be in doing assemblies and meeting staff and students alike, although some of you did meet me just one morning when I was able to bob in before the lockdown took hold. By way of introduction, I am the new minister at Bethesda Evangelical Church, just across the bridge there in Stockton Heath. I've been there since just at the turn of the year, and it's a great opportunity as a church minister to be involved in the local community. And I've always believed that being involved in local schools is a key part of the role that a church minister can take. Before moving over to Bethesda, I was involved in helping run a church in Liverpool. And part of my role there was to be involved in local schools, both primary and secondary. And it's always been a great joy of mine to be going into schools and supporting students, staff, support staff, and indeed parents. And I hope to be able to do a similar role with you guys in Sir Thomas Bottler. It's great to be part of a school family, and I know family is really important to you guys. And especially in these times, those family connections show through and show to be important as we live our lives in these strange and unprecedented times. Well, I hope that in future weeks and months we'll be able to get to know each other better when I'll be able to come into school and meet face to face. But for now, we thought it would be helpful just to introduce myself over the technology platforms that we have. Of course, not being able to be in school means that we're not able to focus in quite so effectively on the ethos of the school, and indeed on those traits, characteristics that are a focus of each term. Some of you will be aware from previous blog posts that this term we're thinking about that characteristic, that trait of compassion. And just very briefly, I wanted to share some of my thoughts on that wonderful character trait and that very necessary part of society and indeed school community life. There are lots of things you could say about compassion, but just by way of introduction, I came across this definition, which I think is really very helpful. Let me read it to you. Compassion is the deep awareness of the suffering of another, coupled with the wish to relieve it. It's one thing to be aware of somebody else's suffering, but real compassion sets out to try and relieve that suffering. It's so important, isn't it, that these statements, these words are not just theory, they are practice. And compassion by definition is practical. It calls me to do something, to see a problem, to see a difficulty, and to do what I can to sort that out, to relieve it, to lessen it some way. And that's really important, isn't it, in a school life and in society life, that we help those around about us. And in these last few days and weeks, there have been many instances, examples of people showing genuine care, compassion, kindness. And we should celebrate that and encourage each other to continue to live that way. It may come across to you as slightly surprising that somebody like Albert Einstein, known for his maths and science, was also someone who wrote about compassion. Let me read you what he wrote about compassion. He said this: compassionate people are geniuses. They're geniuses, he said, in the art of living. Compassionate people are more necessary to the dignity, security, and joy of humanity than the discoverers of knowledge. Wow, that's some statement, isn't it, from Einstein? More necessary to humanity than the discoverers of knowledge. And so I wonder whether you will join Einstein in being a genius, not in maths and science or any of the other subjects, all of which are very important, but a genius when it comes to compassion. Of course, as a church minister, I know, because the Bible tells me, that the place to go to find the genius of geniuses when it comes to compassion is God. This is how he is described by the psalmist in Psalm 145, verses 8 and 9. Let me read these words to you. The Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and rich in love. The Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all he has made. God is defined and described as being compassionate, a God of compassion. He sees our suffering and he acts to relieve it. He does something about it. Ultimately, he sent his son. And as we remembered just a few weeks ago at Easter, his son came and lived and died and rose again to relieve our suffering, to deal with our biggest problem, our broken relationship with him. He came to fix it. The greatest act of compassion, richness of love, goodness to all, and that includes you. So today, remember, compassionate people are